The Most Gangster Green Beret, Robert Howard, by the Fat Electrician.
Normally, I don't like dealing in absolutes. However, I am extremely confident in saying that this is the most gangster supply sergeant of all time.
I'm into it.
Today we're talking about Robert Howard, the most decorated Green Beret in U.S. history. He started off his military career as a mechanic, then became a parachute rigger, then became a supply sergeant. After being shot in the face and surviving in Vietnam, he then volunteered to go out with Mac v. SOG whenever they needed an extra guy or a strap hanger, despite having no Green Beret or Special Forces training. Despite his initial lack of training, he rapidly went from the extra guy they brought along to help carry the radio to the man they specifically requested to come and help on their most dangerous missions. Having been shot in the face, blown up, and severely wounded multiple times on multiple occasions, he is quite literally the human embodiment of the Terminator and has been written up for the Medal of Honor on 3 separate occasions and awarded it once because that's legally the amount of times he could earn it. In addition to that, he has been awarded 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, the Silver Star, the Defense Superior Service Medal, 4 Legions of Merit, 4 Bronze Stars with V device, and 8 Purple Hearts. And we're gonna get into it right after a word from our sponsor. This video is brought.
What an intro. Yeah, I mean, it took a minute to get through those accolades. That's wild.
You buy Element. Okay, we're not gonna overcomplicate this. It's hydration mix. You buy a box, it's got a bunch of sticks in it. You pour that in your water, you drink it, and then you're more hydrated. They got a bunch of different flavors. They also sell them in pre-made cans. And if you're like ultra health minded, you can get just the raw thing and mix it with your water, and then it tastes like you're drinking salt water. Because you are. Element's legitimately one of the few products that I approached to see if they would sponsor me because I actually used their product beforehand, and to be honest with you, I just wanted a bunch of it for free. Let's read the ingredient list together. Okay, I actually know all of these words. Salt, citric acid, magnesium, potassium, natural flavors, stevia extract. That's it. Okay, there's no artificial dyes, so RFK's happy, the brainworms are mad. It's fantastic. On top of that, it's used by all kinds of professional athletes in the NBA, the NHL, the Olympics, and all other kinds of stuff, which it raises the obvious question, why are they sponsoring a guy known as the Fat Electrician on the internet? And the obvious answer is, well, I'm known for drinking copious amounts of alcohol on the internet, including at the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Better knowing how much paperwork went into getting
First one to finish a White Claw on the Pentagon. To be completely honest with you, Element is probably the only reason me and the boys over at the Unsubscribed podcast were able to finish our last live tour, because I don't think we would have made it to all the venues without it. So yeah, if you want to give it a try, head over to DrinkElement/Fat Electrician. Doesn't matter if you're an old customer or a new customer, you're going to get a free sample pack with your order. Let's get back to the video.
I would give it subjective 8, objective 9. I think, yeah, I mean, the banner at the bottom, really good. Audio is consistent, good transition. I think what pushes it over for most people is the Pentagon drinking episode. Yeah, I give it like audio was consistent, visuals were clean, clearly uses the product, clearly recommends the product, clearly transparent. Yeah, I mean, I'll amend to both on 9, objective and subjective 9s. I liked it. I thought it was good.
All right, our story begins on July 11th, 1939, when Robert Howard is born in Opelika, Alabama. When he's 4 years old, his dad is drafted to go off and fight in World War II in the Pacific, and when dad comes back, he suffers from what I can only describe as undiagnosed PTSD and has a crippling alcohol problem. From there, dad works at the local cab company for the rest of Robert's childhood, and he grows up dirt poor in Opelika, Alabama, with his dad, his mom, his grandmother, and his 6 younger siblings. The only early childhood memory that he ever talks about was when he was young, he finally got a new pair of shoes, which was a big deal for a poor kid in the 1940s, and 5 high school bullies were trying to take his shoes, and for the first week, they would chase him from the bus all the way to his house, but he would always outrun them and never get caught and got to keep his shoes.
That boy sure is a running fool.
After seeing this, his grandmother pulled him aside and said, "Robert, you don't run away from your problems, you run towards them." The very next day, he comes back home from school, beat up, but he still had his shoes. From here, Robert continues to grow up, and he is pretty much a brick shithouse of a young man, being 6 foot tall, 170 pounds, extremely athletic, and good at sports.
See, I think this is going to be a weird one to talk about, especially in modern context, because I think his grandmother was absolutely based, 100%. If someone's trying to, take something from you, run to your problems, don't run from them, stand your ground, right? But especially more and more in modernity, we see how in schools, bullies are allowed to do whatever they want, but the moment you fight back, suddenly you're the problem and you're getting suspended, because why would you do such a thing? Wasn't there the viral situation of a kid was getting bullied, so he laced his cupcake with a laxative, so the bully, knowing that the bully would steal his cupcake, right? The bully ate it and then absolutely just... he had a time, right? But but the bully didn't get in trouble. The kid who was getting bullied got in trouble. So, especially in modernity, where like comparing and contrasting then versus now, right? Like these issues have always been around. Bullies, bullying, overlooking the bullying, right? Seems to have always been a thing, right? But I feel the way we've handled it has been changed, right? And if the bullying isn't getting addressed and we're punishing the people who are getting bullied and standing up for themselves, do you think that this individual would have gone to have such a storied career? I would argue not. If anything, it's entirely possible that in a similar situation, but in modernity, the person ends up just having a bunch of unaddressed anger issues, and maybe they get into substance abuse, right? Because even if they stand up for themselves, their agency and freedom is taken from them. So that's one of those that it's a little interesting to compare and contrast for me.
Despite that, he drops out of high school to help his family make money and goes to work with dad at the cab company. When he's 17 years old, he gets his GED and then wants to enlist in the military. Dad is furious, doesn't want his son to enlist, wants him to go off, get a normal job, lead a normal life. Robert basically just comes to him and is like, look, I'm 17, I need your signature to let me go join the military, but I'm gonna do it in a year anyways if you say no, so you might as well just let me do it now. Dad agrees, signs the paperwork, Robert ships off to basic training. Crushes basic, crushes AIT, no problem whatsoever, ends up getting stationed at Fort Hood, and he is a mechanic because of his experience at the cab company. Now that sounds all good and fine, but this isn't what Robert wanted. Robert grew up watching propaganda from World War II and the Korean War. He wanted to go off and become a paratrooper, and now he's stuck inside the motor pool doing maintenance on a bunch of military vehicles. This is just, it's not what he wanted. But he's trapped. There's nothing he can do. So he basically just lives it up. He's, you know, a lower enlisted private than a specialist. He's partying, he's drinking too much, he's going out with his friends. He's not really doing anything to advance his military career. After a couple of years of doing that, his re-enlistment's starting to come up, and his sergeant pulls him aside and is like, hey, look, if you want to stay in the Army, you got to get your shit together and actually start doing stuff to advance your career. Otherwise, they're going to kick you out. So that's exactly what he does. He gets real straight-laced, quits drinking so much, quits partying so much, goes out into town, finds a nice girl by the name of Tina. They wind up getting married. From here, he turns into an excellent soldier. Then when that re-enlistment time finally comes, they want to keep him in. So he says, you know, I'll re-enlist for another 6 years, but I want it put in my contract that you're going to send me off to be a paratrooper. They agree. He gets sent off to Fort Bragg, attached to the 101st Airborne, goes through paratrooper school, passes through.
So during re-enlistment period, I'm assuming that there are going to be, excuse me, sorry, phlegm. Was sick over vacation. I apologize about that. I'm assuming that there would be extenuating circumstance clauses where, let's say, active time of war. So like, let's say hypothetically tomorrow, right? Someone like Raven in chat. Let's say that they were enlisted, right? And their contract came due. But, you know, there was an active war happening. And especially because we know from the Unsubscribed podcast, we know from a bunch of people who serve and have served that the military is having recruitment issues, right? And so it sounds like you're able to kind of negotiate your contract a little bit here. I'm assuming that what I'm trying to get is that gets overridden at a certain point, right? In an active time of war, extenuating circumstances, etc., it would be hypothetically possible for someone like Raven in chat to be told, we're not allowing you to leave. We are extending your contract. You have no say in this. Here are your orders. So, like, I'm assuming that there's a built-in clause, right? I'm assuming that there are some... Is it DOD or DOW now? I don't remember. They keep changing stuff. Department of Defense, I'm assuming, has, you know, lawyers and legal who could ironclad people into extended contracts. At least I'm assuming that's the case. I don't have knowledge of how that system works.
That no problem, gets his jump wings, becomes a parachute rigger and a supply sergeant with the 101st Airborne. From here, his wife Tina ends up getting pregnant, and he is shortly after that sent over to France for 2 years straight, comes back home and meets his daughter for the first time when she's 18 months old. He is then home for about 45 minutes before getting sent off to Vietnam.
Oh.
This is a whole other country.
As they make their approach into theater, he is informed that they are going to be making an amphibious landing. He's pumped. He wants to go into combat. This has been his whole thing. In his brain, he's thinking D-Day, storming the beach at Normandy, enemy gunfire. This is going to be awesome, action hero type stuff. As they approach, he's informed, oh, it's actually a secured beach. This is just the fastest way to get everybody off the boat.
shrimp balls in these waters.
So, not the excitement he was looking for, but whatever. They pull up in the Higgins boat, they drop the hatch door, he's told that they're on the beach, he steps off, full of all of his gear, 120 pounds worth of shit. He then sinks 12 feet to the ocean floor and almost drowns. From here, it's 6 weeks of just moving closer and closer towards combat, and it's just a giant nothing burger. Nothing ever happens, they're just driving the trucks closer, marching, getting to where the actual combat is. As they get closer, things start to escalate. Sometimes there's, incoming mortars, sometimes there's enemy sniper fire, but really it's just kind of boring. Nothing ever happens, never sees any bad guys, nothing. And then one day they get ambushed, nobody was expecting it, it's a giant clusterfuck. His officer in charge is kind of like panicking, doesn't know what to do, he's froze up, not giving any orders. Howard runs up to him and is like, what are we doing? What's the plan? Guy doesn't have anything, so he's just like, point to a spot on the map you want me to defend, I'll go defend it. Gives Howard a location, Howard grabs some guys and sets off to defend that perimeter. Once he gets to his position, he starts setting up the perimeter, getting his guys set up with fields of fire, and while he's doing that, he winds up getting shot in the face with an AK-47, right in the cheek, passes through his mouth, knocks out a bunch of his teeth, and he wakes up in the hospital. And wouldn't you know it, the guy in the bed next to him is actually his buddy from airborne school that apparently has went on to become a Special Forces Green Beret. They wind up hanging out the entire time while they're both recovering in the hospital. Then one day, Green Beret guy is getting ready to leave. His colonel comes to pick him up, and he recommends to the colonel, like, hey, this is my buddy, Robert Howard. We could use a guy like him out in the field. And the colonel's like, is that so? You think you want to do this? And Robert Howard is like, yeah, anything to get me into the action. And he just kind of nods and walks off.
Does this doesn't happen in modernity, does it? Because the number of horror stories we've heard about, online and personally as well, right? About superior officers, who will actively not support you in getting more pay, right? A lot of the nepotism at play there, a lot of the corruption and rot at the very top. Certain general grade 2s, right? Or 2-star generals in the Air Force who wanted to retire rather than face a court-martial, right? So I think this is an idealistic view. And obviously this has happened, clearly. I don't know how much of this would happen in modernity. And I also wonder how the military has changed since Vietnam into its modern iteration, which is interesting.
Howard has to spend a little bit more time in the hospital recovering. Once he's fully recovered, he basically forgot that conversation even happened, ships back off to his unit with the 101st, gets there, and his commanding officer was like, Howard, there's a chopper waiting for you. They got to take you somewhere. And he's like, what? Where? He's like, I have no idea. Apparently it's Special Forces and it's top secret. They're not telling me shit, just to tell you to get on the chopper. So he gets on the helicopter. That flies him to Saigon to the Military Assistance Command of Vietnam, aka MACV. While he is there, he is offered the opportunity to assist the Studies and Observations Group, a top secret military unit that responds directly to the White House and the Joint Chiefs of Staff that the government will not admit even exists for decades afterwards. From here, he is told that this is strictly voluntary. He does not have to do this, but if he does want to, he'll be operating inside of foreign countries, Laos and Cambodia, 2 places America is not supposed to be.
Also heard we're in fucking Cambodia right now. Cambodia? Man, you kidding me.
Because of that, on these missions, he will be going behind enemy lines with nothing that identifies him as an American soldier, and if he is killed or captured, which there is a high likelihood of, the American government will sweep it under the rug and say they know nothing about it. Now, I can only assume hearing this, Robert is like, okay, so let me get this straight. You want me, a supply sergeant, to go out with the Green Berets in a country we're not supposed to be in the most dangerous combat that you have with a super high casualty rate, with no Green Beret training whatsoever. And the American government is like, yeah, that's exactly it. And if you survive for like 6 months, we'll send you back home to America and then you can get your Green Beret and we'll get you the training then after you've already done the job. To which Robert is like,
you son of a bitch, I'm in.
Oh, 100%. I think a lot of us when if presented with a situation like that, yeah, no. 100% based.
Fast forward, Robert shows up to a SOG forward operational base and he is blown away because it is not like any other military operation he has ever seen. Robert is straight-laced, clean-shaven, right uniform, right place, right time, and everybody else on this operational base is just walking around in whatever clothes they want. They've got beards, they've got ponytails, don't look like the military professional that he's ever seen, yet these are the best operators America has to offer. Despite eventually going on to become one of these guys, he never really gives up his clean-shaven, straight-laced appearance, which, you know what, to be fair, Fucking look at him. If I looked like that, I wouldn't give up my clean-shaven look either, okay? Look at his jawline. Homie could get in a katana fight with that jawline and probably win. Sorry, anyways, from here, he spends the next 6 months being the supply sergeant on the forward operational base and operating as a strap hanger. Strap hanger is just the term for like, hey, we've got a group of SOG guys going out. They need an extra volunteer to help carry the radio and just do what they're told. Robert starts doing a ton of that. And to be honest, during this period of time, we don't have many specifics outside of that for multiple reasons. Everything's top secret. A lot of the MACV SOG documents were destroyed after Vietnam, and Robert never kept a personal journal. In fact,
I mean, so the CIA was doing things about this time too, and that's why we don't have certain things on MK Ultra and other things, right? Is because they actively destroy the documents. It's really interesting to consider that, like, and obviously this was like super top secret, right, or above top secret. I don't know the actual classification, but it's also one of those things where like, who gets held accountable for that, right? You know, well, I'm just following orders. We saw that the Nuremberg trials sets precedent that that's not an excuse, right? Technically, it would have had precedent in the the Japanese trials, right? Unit 731. But obviously, that and Shiraishi literally got away scot-free with everything that they did on that. So I guess maybe the precedent started to wane there. But the Nuremberg trial does set precedent. Well, we also have precedent from modern history as well, that divulging top secret documents and having access to them by precedent is technically not punishable anymore. So yeah, a lot of military should be definitely talking to lawyers if they've ever been punished for dealing with top secret, above top secret, or classified materials, because we literally have precedent that you will not be punished anymore. So the problem is that the system needs to work, and if the system stops working or people abuse the system, it sets a bad precedent.
the only reason we have stories on Robert Howard at all is because they had to document what he did to earn his medals. Everything outside of that he did is lost to time. So we don't really know what happened over this 6-month span. However, we do know that he was in combat because during this period, he was awarded the Combat Infantry Badge. From here, he goes back home and he goes through the entire Green Beret training pipeline through 1966 through 1967. And by the end of 1967, he is awarded his Green Beret. From here, he gets sent back out to Vietnam, still operating as part of SOG. He is sent to SOG Forward Operational Base 2, which is right at a tri-border area between Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, so they can go into both those countries fairly quickly and fairly easily whenever needed. He is still operating as a supply sergeant, and he is not attached to an actual SOG team, so he is still operating as a strap hanger whenever they need somebody. Initially, he struggles to get the opportunity to actually go out with a SOG team because, well, they're going out behind enemy lines on an extremely dangerous mission. Nobody wants to bring the fucking new guy for his first time, right? Well, somebody finally takes a chance on him. He proves himself. He starts strap hanging all the time, and from here, he goes from the fucking new guy to the guy that everybody specifically requests because he's ferocious on the battlefield, and he comes up with, we'll say, innovative solutions to problems. On one occasion, he was strap hanging for a SOG team, and they were going to go behind enemy lines for 19 days straight and plot out safe paths for downed pilots to take to get back into Vietnam and get to safety. The problem was that by this point in time, the North Vietnamese had become aware of SOG's operations, and they were actually sending teams out to be counter reconnaissance. So whenever they saw helicopters coming into country, they would have scouts in the area, and they would just trail the SOG operatives so that they knew everything SOG knew. Obviously, for a mission where you're trying to chart a safe path for a downed pilot, you don't want the enemy knowing where these safe paths are, so they need to figure out a way how to get rid of this counter reconnaissance unit. So they called up the supply sergeant. He then proceeds to take an old footlocker, you know, that big trunk that sits at the foot of your bed when you're in the military that you put all your stuff in and lock it with a padlock. He takes one of those, paints it bright red, fills it with 80 pounds of TNT, ball bearings, nails, all kinds of shit, and then rigs it up to explode on a 5-minute timer. They fly in on the helicopters, get dropped off in this country, grab this red footlocker, throw it out the helicopter, and then run off into the wood line, leaving the footlocker. Now, to the enemy, if there is an enemy out there that's surveilling them, this looks like they were in such a hurry that they either forgot their supplies or they were in such a hurry they didn't want to be bogged down and have to carry them. So they go out, they run into the wood line, they're laying down, watching this chest. Sure enough, an entire squad of NVA counter reconnaissance comes up and they start investigating this footlocker, trying to pry it open. Footlocker obviously explodes. Counter recon guys are now gone. Robert Howard said that it blew debris a quarter mile away.
Yeah? Nice. A lot of explosives in that.
On another occasion, he was part of a hatchet force, which was a team that was actually supposed to go out and engage the enemy, and he thought it would be a good idea to run up next to a troop transport truck full of NVA soldiers. He then rigged up a claymore to explode and hucked it in the back before diving in the ditch and blowing up the entire truck. One of the SOG team leaders that he strap hung for consistently later described him as, and I quote, "I never saw him show any fear whatsoever. He'd do anything you wanted him to do." Dude was literally the Terminator.
So wasn't that the big problem with Vietnam? Was you had public sentiment at home was pretty all-time lows, but you also had politicians and military bureaucrats all sitting in lovely air-conditioned offices trying to determine what the proper rules of engagement would be. Not being on the ground, not actively being in the situation, but making rules for people who they really could care less about, right? They don't care about. So, like, I mean, we could have seen a lot more. Like, obviously, this was a genius solution, in my opinion. We could have seen a lot more of this and maybe even more success potentially if other factors weren't necessarily at play, right? Like if the U.S. armed forces wasn't actively being nerfed, right? I think that's a big point of contention, right?
Cybernetic organism, living tissue over metal endoskeleton.
All right, late October 1967, Howard volunteers as strap hang for a recon mission. Super straightforward mission. There's a river. Next to that river, there's a trail that the NVA is well known for using. Military intelligence figures there's got to be a communication line strung right along that trail so they can communicate. They want them to go in, super sneaky, attach something onto this wire so they're going to be able to listen to all their communications and then get out. So they go out on this mission. Everything's going great. They make it to where this river is. They're looking for the communication wire, and they come up on an enormous enemy cache of supplies, food, there's 1,000 rounds of recoilless rocket ammunition, and a ton of small arms ammo. They figure they got to do something about this, but they're a small recon element. They're not going to be able to take this out by themselves, so they radio back into headquarters. Headquarters agrees they need to get rid of it, so they send in an entire hatchet force, which is like 30 to 60 guys that are meant to actually engage the enemy. They go, they link up with the hatchet force, they bring them to the cache, and while they're making their way to this enemy cache, they get ambushed. A concealed enemy machine gun position unconceals itself, starts opening fire on Howard and all of his men. Howard dons his plot armor and rushes the machine gun nest by himself, gets to the mouth of it, and drops all 4 men inside of this nest. While that was happening, another enemy machine gun nest unconcealed itself, unbeknownst to Howard, and as soon as he clears the first one, he blacks out. He got lit up by that second machine gun nest, and when he comes to, he's shot through his left shoulder, he's got a broken clavicle, and he's got blood all over his face. He was just shot in the face again. In hindsight, he thinks it was a ricochet because it didn't penetrate his actual skull. Regardless, he's not doing that great. So he lays there and waits for the medic to come help him out. No, I'm just kidding. He starts crawling towards the other enemy machine gun nest after being shot, and he starts making his way there, and then he starts taking fairly accurate fire from an enemy marksman off in the distance, grabs his CAR-15, returns fire, kills that guy, continues crawling to the enemy machine gun nest, gets right up to the mouth of it, and hits it with a grenade.
I said there's no bell.
From here, he runs back.
I mean, you got to be built different, right? Especially to work through that pain. Because, I mean, like, what did I do? The funny taser knife I bought, right? Like, even on a low charge, I mean, that thing kind of burns, right? Unless you start to understand, right? Someone hits you with a taser or a taser knife, right? You can't exactly work through the pain. You can't exactly, like, work through that. There's only so many things that you can work through, right? Rolled ankle, broken ankle, hurt wrist, right? I mean, like, things that inconvenience a lot of us, right? And can put us out of commission, right? Even in doing SCA stuff, right? I mean, we definitely reiterate that, hitting each other's digits pretty hard is kind of a bad thing, right? Or especially if you, like, thrust a rapier and it just mashes into someone's fingers, right? Because, our day jobs, right? We clicky clackety, we do the typing, we do things with our hands for our jobs, right? And that's the inherent difference between, military and what I do, right? Where I can spar for fun, I can spar to learn, I can spar to kind of understand certain things, right? Certain things that would be applicable to military combat, closing the gap, making sure to stay close, a movement economy, right? But it's not necessarily the same because the military fights to win and because it's their job, versus someone like me can fight because I have the luxury of being able to kind of spar, reflect, learn, right? Like there is an inherent difference in what I do versus what the military does. And even in the military, right? There's I always forget the qualification. It's the one where it's the interrogation one where they can like legally break one or two of your fingers, right? Like not everyone can go through that. So for a person to be lit up by a second machine gun nest to be able to continue to go is just next level.
Back to his men, makes it to cover, and they start getting lit up by that first machine gun nest all over again. More bad guys have spawned from the jungle and manned this gun all over again. Made a mistake, left the machine gun operable, not about to make that mistake again. Looks to one of his men, says, give me that rocket launcher, hands Bob the rocket launcher. Bob pops up out of the ditch, fires a rocket launcher directly at this nest, blows the entire thing up. From here, the hatchet force and everybody else moves in, they burn all the food, they blow up all the ammunition, they exfil, they get extracted by helicopter. Bob gets sent off to the hospital. Bob gets patched up at the hospital, gets out of the hospital, gets in a helicopter. They fly him to MACV-SOG headquarters with one other guy that was there that apparently did exceptional things in the battle as well, and they go into a meeting with General Westmoreland, the 4-star general that is in command of all of SOG. Westmoreland then sits him down, tells him that that was one of the biggest enemy caches they've ever found, and that this mission was an enormous success, and both of them performed incredibly, and basically does like the Godfather Mafia move of like, I owe you one, what do you guys want? First guy tells General Westmoreland he wants to get commissioned as an officer and go off to flight school because he wants to be a pilot. General Westmoreland's like, done. Turns to Howard, what do you want? Robert Howard looks him right in the eye and says, I just want to continue my combat duty.
I live for this shit.
Fair enough. I mean, so in a situation like that, it would technically be disrespectful to turn it down, right? Right. Like, obviously, he's doing it in a way where he's like, I want to continue. Right. But like, if you were to be in a situation like this and your commanding officer, superior officer would be saying like, hey, I owe you one, and you just say no, wouldn't that be seen as a little disrespectful? I'm trying to equate it because like in the civilian sector, right? Like you save your boss's ass, right? Like you save their bacon, right? Because I don't know, a project got behind or something was happening, and you go the extra mile and get it done, right? And they're like, hey, I owe you a favor, right? Like in the civilian world, you could just say, no, I'm literally just doing my job, right? And obviously it's depending how you word it, right? I don't know. I would assume it'd be the same thing. Like I guess you could technically decline. I'm thinking of this too much in terms of like, is it seen as honorable or dishonorable to decline a gesture as such, right? I think I'm approaching this from a weird perspective.
From here, Bob gets back to SOB2, continues his duties as a supply sergeant, and the base commander informs him that he has written him up for the Medal of Honor. He would not wind up getting awarded it, though. It would get downgraded to a Distinguished Service Cross. Second week of December, they think they know where a battalion headquarters is for the NVA. They want to send in a big team and take them out. Basically, they're going to send in a team, get eyes on headquarters, call in an accurate airstrike, blow the entire thing up. That being said, they're expecting heavy contact, going to be a super dangerous mission. Call in the supply sergeant. So they go in, they get inserted miles and miles from where they think this headquarters actually is because they want to be able to sneak up through the jungle. As soon as the helicopters touch down, they get ambushed. During this ambush, Bob ends up getting shot through the right shoulder and getting his forearm sliced up from shrapnel. Despite that, they fight off this ambush and Bob refuses to get extracted. According to him, it wasn't that bad and he didn't want to be the reason they ended the mission.
I am a machine.
From here, mind you, after being shot and hit with shrapnel and getting attacked by an ambush, they then proceed to walk 2 days through the jungle to get to where they think this battalion headquarters is. So Bob and the other 9 guys in this 10-man element make it to where they think it's at. The headquarters is there. They start observing, they're looking around, they're seeing what's going on, they're watching everybody, getting intel. And they come to the realization, this isn't 1 battalion, it's 2. It is now 1,000 versus 10. But that's okay, it's not a big deal. They're not trying to engage the enemy in a 10 versus 1,000 battle. They're just there to call in the airstrike, which is exactly what they do. They call in the airstrike, a bunch of enemy soldiers take off running into the wood line, abandoning their HQ. They blow the HQ all to shit, at which point the airstrike is done and Bob's looking around like, they fucking missed some. So Bob goes in there, brings the other 9 guys with him, and they burn down all the rest of the buildings and tents and blow up the rest of the supplies. Then they hightail it out of there. As they're headed back to the extraction point, they run into a bunch of the soldiers that had abandoned their HQ, and they adopt a defensive position, get in a huge firefight. Over the course of this firefight, Howard and other estimates say somewhere between 30 and 40 NVA were killed. Helicopters show up to pick them up, everybody starts boarding the plane, and wouldn't you know it, Bob, aka the only guy that's been fucking shot and blown up, is the last one to get on the helicopter. A few days later, on December 10th, Bob would be awarded the Bronze Star with V device for his actions during this mission.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I feel like that's where you get into interbranch like play, right? Where like, you know, you because I mean, it seems like a small world, right? Being able for him to be hospitalized earlier and, you know, meet his buddy, you know, who went through the schooling he did, right, to be a Green Beret, right? Like, I mean, I feel like the military ends up being pretty small world in certain aspects, but very much, you know, someone going, you know, hey, what'd you do with your service? Oh, hey, you know, flew in Vietnam. Hey, fucko, you missed a bunch of shit, right? And he's like, you know what? Not all of us have to be on the ground, right? And I feel like you could have some interplay there, right? Interplay that I, as a civilian, don't engage in. I cannot in good faith. I have not done what the military has done, plain and simple, right? And that's fine. That's how that works. But I feel like that helps to like illustrate why some of the interbranch, I want to say bickering, but not in a negative way, right? The bashing on each other in a fun way. That's why you get a bunch of that.
From here, Bob gets patched up, goes back to being supply sergeant on SOB2, continues going out on strap hanger missions. Like I said earlier, we don't really know the details of every single mission because all the documents were destroyed, and we only know the accounts of the missions where he earned a major medal. The next of which would come on May 14th, 1968. He goes out on a mission. They wind up getting ambushed. During the battle, Bob gets shot in the left shoulder, the right leg, and he gets blown up and has shrapnel all over him. Despite that, none of it pierces the plot armor. He continues to fight through the ambush. After the ambush is over, he gets medevaced and sent back to the field hospital. His wounds are too serious for the field hospital, so they have to send him to Japan to a specialized hospital against his will. He recovers in Japan until he's stable enough for the flight back home to America. He is then sent to Fort Bragg. While in Fort Bragg recovering, his wife...
I had somebody talk about this, like literally today. I had a comment on it. Yako, thanks for the sub. I guess Fort Bragg was renamed, and then it was not renamed. I don't know. There's some naming convention going on with it.
He comes up from Texas with his daughters, and they're living in temporary housing. And one day he gets notified that he has to come to some award ceremony. Some fancy general's giving out a bunch of awards to a bunch of people that have earned him. So he tells his wife, like, hey, we got to go to this award ceremony. And she's like, oh, are you getting an award? And he's like, yeah, I'm getting an award or two or whatever. So they show up to this award ceremony. The general's...
Speaking of that, if you disagree with, a lot of people disagree with Patton, right? If General Patton was issuing an awards, could you technically decline? Could you technically say I refuse these awards, these accolades? I mean, that would be not dissimilar to like taking a knee during the national anthem, right? But how would that work in the military? Because freedom of speech and expression, but you're also contracted through the military. Once again, I guess it comes down to honor versus dishonor, and I guess it could be argued that if you are in contract, I guess it'd be argued that like you're not AWOL, but you're definitely like, how do you work through that? Like ideally, yeah, like you show up, you get the award, right? Because you're getting an award, right? But if you wanted to make a statement, right? Like what was it? What was the big one that happened in the last year? The U.S. president did a speech for West Point, I think. Like, if you're in the military and you just chose not to show up, right? Could they prosecute you for that? Well, not prosecute, not legally, right? Would you be in contempt though? I think that's the word I'm looking for, right? Like, if you disagree with something in the military, do you have ability to decline? As it were, like, oh, well, General Patton is giving an award. I don't want to show up and do that, right? Or, you know, hey, there's a speech from the commander-in-chief at West Point. You know, the last one went so well, I'm going to choose not to. Is that a course of action you could do? I'm looking at the strictly mechanical interaction here.
Calling people up, giving out awards, and like if you've never been to a military award ceremony, if you get an award, they read the entire citation for why you're awarded the award. They give it to you, shake hands, salute, yada yada. Yeah, Robert Howard's turn rolls around. He goes up there in front of the general, and the general then has to award and read the citation for 3 Purple Hearts, 3 Army Accommodation Medals, a Bronze Star with V device, and a Distinguished Service Cross, all back to back to back.
Oh, is that it?
It's like a 45-minute affair of a general just reading to a crowd of people the stories of Bob basically being the main character. And the entire time, presumably his wife and daughters are sitting in the crowd like, I had no idea I was married to fucking Rambo.
That'd be pretty fun.
He is back at SOB2, and he is no longer a strap hanger and supply sergeant. He is a full-fledged SOG infantry guy, and he's going to be leading teams. By November 10th, a SOG team goes out on a mission. They end up getting pinned down and are not able to get extracted. The best estimates is this is not conventional NVA forces. This is some type of special unit that has been brought in to go toe-to-toe with SOG, and they need to go in there with a bunch of more guys and finish the job. This mission would go on to become known as Slam 7, when a massive SOG force, 115 men, all go in to help recover this team. So the choppers come in and they're taking fire in the landing zone immediately. Howard jumps out of the helicopter when it's still 15 feet above the ground and starts returning fire, killing 2 enemies immediately. They continue fighting through this ambush. They make their way to this SOG recon team, and it's a scene out of a horror movie. All of the members of this recon team have been executed. Every one of these guys was severely wounded in battle, and then they were executed by being shot in the head by the NVA. While other men are still engaging the enemy, Howard and some of the other leaders on the ground are examining the bodies. They're going to recover the bodies, and Howard notices that one of the men's eyes is tracking him, even though he's been shot in the head, in addition to having 19 other gunshot wounds. They call the helicopters back in. They start coming in. They're loading up the bodies and all the wounded men. The helicopters are taking off, and one of the helicopters ends up getting shot down by massive anti-aircraft guns. Their best guess is that it's an anti-aircraft setup on the back of a half-track. So then they go, they rescue those guys, get them out of there, and then they call in for orders like, hey, there's heavy anti-aircraft guns. What do you want us to do? Thinking they're still going to get extracted. The whole point of coming out here was to recover the men or the bodies of the men. That's what they've done. Time to leave. Chain of command says you need to take out the anti-aircraft guns. You don't know where it came from. Go find them and take them out.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, this
That's
just
kind of
turned into an
job.
overnight operation. They bed down for the night. They get ambushed in the middle of the night with grenades and mortars, one of which peppers Howard's entire backside with shrapnel.
Yikes.
Howard then calls in air support, orders his men to only return fire with 40mm grenade launchers because that's not going to give off a muzzle flash, giving the enemy their position. Airstrike comes in, the NVA leaves, they're cool for the rest of the night. The next day, this massive element of about 100 men now is still moving, looking for these anti-aircraft guns, and the entire time they're just thinking like, this is too big of an element, we're too far behind enemy lines, this is a horrible idea. Day after that, they're completely out of supplies. They need food, they need water, they need more ammunition. None of these guys were planning on this being a multi-day operation. So they call in a supply drop, they get the supplies, they got food, they got water, they got ammo. The only problem is they're behind enemy lines, and now the enemy has a general idea where they're at because they saw the supply drop. They get surrounded by the NVA, they have to hunker down, a massive firefight ensues, and they have to call for extraction or they're all gonna die. Helicopters start showing up, they're getting the wounded on board first, they're starting to get some guys out of there, and then like the third helicopter gets shot down, and now they have to go rescue those guys too.
Yikes.
So Howard leads a team, and they go rescue the crew from the down chopper, get them back while they're still loading choppers and getting people out of here. Remember, they got 100 guys, and you can only fit so many on a helicopter. They're trying to coordinate the choppers landing in between waves of NVA attack. That way the choppers aren't getting shot down while they're in this massive firefight. And as time passes, it starts to get dark out, and they're going to have to be out there overnight. Howard.
So this 100% encapsulates why I keep talking about the person actually doing the job, the person on the ground, not the person in Washington, not the military officer sitting in an air-conditioned air-conditioned office all day, right? Not the bureaucratic side of thing, because honestly, that whole side can go fuck itself, right? But being on the ground, having to take the risk because, you kind of need to eat, you kind of need water, right? To be able to get your airdrop in, to be able to coordinate evacuation in real time between wave after wave of enemy forces, right? Being able to coordinate your chopper lifts between, chopper extractions between every wave, right? Minimizing risk, minimizing liability, right? That's why I talk about the person on the ground. That's why I'm so sick of people kind of just shitting on, the people who are actually doing the job. Because anyone could sit in an office and say, well, I think they should do this. Or anyone could be, an officer, whether they're based, on merit or not is questionable, right? And sitting in an office and, well, this should be the rules of engagement. It was back in our day, right? When people are actively on the ground in an active situation and actively, going KIA, right? That's so fucking stupid to me that people get to sit in offices and make policies and procedures and make demands of those who are actively in a situation that they know next to nothing about. That's why I take issue. That's why when I talk about the military, it's never about these bureaucrats or politicians, right? Or these generals, right? It's about the person actually making a difference on the ground, the person who actually has to work.
The remaining men on the ground are basically stuck there fighting all night long. However, they get a ton of air support. They've got A-10 Sky Raiders dropping napalm. They even get a C-47 Spooky gunship, which is a predecessor to the AC-130. Literally a cargo plane that a bunch of grunts just cut the sides out of and mounted artillery and miniguns that just circles around them, mowing down anything that tries to get near them all night long. During this night, Howard gets hit with another grenade and has more shrapnel inside of him, which is pretty much more shrapnel than Guy at this point.
Yeah. I would ignore
Finally, morning comes around. It's foggy as shit out. The battle's died down. It's really looking like they're going to make it out of this alive. And through the fog, there's two silhouettes coming towards them with their hands in the air, and it's two NVA soldiers. Howard and the commanding officer both yell, "Don't shoot," because if they're surrendering, we want to take them in for intel, because very few NVA soldiers have been captured to gain intel.
But at the same time, you don't know if it's a bait. You don't know if they have explosives strapped to them. Like, being in that situation, like I don't have the training to really go through what goes through someone's mind, especially because remember, being shot at all night or being shot at for multiple days, right? Especially if you're in an active like situation mentality. Sure, you might be able to do 2 + 2, 2 minus 2, but you're not necessarily doing calculus in your head, right? As I understand it, the way training works is you're able to do basic thought concepts and you're be able to perform, and then you do need your time to de-stress and relax and come down, right? But you're not necessarily thinking about macro concepts, right? You're not necessarily thinking about advanced concepts, so to speak. Not that the individual is incapable of doing it. What I'm trying to get across is, from what I understand, talking about the subject of training and drills, right? Why drill sergeants yell at you is to trigger that part of your brain to be able to operate under stress. You can operate, but you're not necessarily doing, advanced concepts, advanced calculations, etc. Right? You are relying on your training at that point. So being under a, we're literally getting fired at and shot at, having to weigh risk and liability in a situation like this, it's wild to me.
Fortunately, with this massive SOG element, there was a large contingency of indigenous people that were fighting alongside SOG, and those guys did not listen and shot both of them immediately. At this point, Howard's pissed, the commanding officer's pissed off, and they're just like, fuck. They're waiting on the choppers to come, and after a couple of minutes, another silhouette comes walking forward with his hands up. It's another NVA trying to surrender, and before anybody can react, Howard jumps up and sprints at the guy and literally picks him off the ground, throws him down, makes sure he doesn't have anything on him, and then carries him back into their position. From here, they get extracted, they make it out. Howard actually has to go to a bigger hospital because the little aid station on their fob isn't big enough to handle his injuries, so he gets sent off to the hospital. While he's there, he finds out that that is only one of 3 NVA that have been captured by SOG in years. And the intel that they gained from him led to 9 successful bombings of NVA bases. For this, he was again written up for the Medal of Honor, but it was downgraded to a Silver Star and a Purple Heart. While at this hospital on a larger base, Bob Howard decided to do Bob Howard stuff, and he didn't like the food in the hospital, so in his hospital pajamas, he leaves the hospital and just goes to a normal chow hall. While he's at this chow hall, 2 Vietnamese on a moped pull up and throw a grenade into the crowd of soldiers. Everybody freaks out, everybody's diving, nobody knows what to do. The MP that's standing there with a gun, because he's the only guy with a gun right now, is just like locked up, not knowing what to do. Howard, in his hospital pajamas, grabs the M16 from the MP, gets down in a prone position, shoots the passenger off the moped, causing the driver to crash, and then chases down the moped, confronts the driver, they get into an altercation, and he shoots that guy too. He then walks back to the chow hall, hands the rifle back to the MP, and finishes his lunch.
That MP's definitely getting yelled at, 100%. I mean, man knows what he has to do, right? I mean, it just kind of locks in. The training just kicks in, right? Man solved the situation. Should he have been there? Probably should have been in the hospital. But he was there, and he prevented more of a tragedy, right? Prevented people from getting, prevented those individuals from getting away. Like, man did his job.
So Howard recovers, gets back to SOB2, starts going out on missions again. His next big mission is to go out and recover a SOG operative that is MIA from a previous mission. So they go in with helicopters, and as soon as the helicopters come out, they start getting lit up by enemy gunfire. It's an ambush. They are using this guy as bait. Howard ends up making it out of the helicopter. He estimates that there was probably 2 platoons launching this ambush, and in the first opening seconds, 8 NVA soldiers got killed. In the opening minutes of this battle, Howard gets hit with an enemy grenade up close. It launches him 10 feet down a hill, and he is now unconscious. When he finally comes to, he wakes up and he sees red. Not like he sees red, he's angry and he just drank a Monster Energy drink and his name's Kyle and he sees a bunch of drywall red. No, like
Somebody who knows a guy named Kyle. That makes sense.
That's the only thing he sees is the color red.
Right.
And for a minute, he freaks out thinking he's been blinded. He still hears gunshots and explosions going off all around him. All hell's breaking loose. He has no idea how long he's been unconscious. He starts wiping his eyes and they're just caked with blood. He's bleeding all over the place and his vision starts finally coming back. He reaches for his gun. It's been blown up by the grenade. It's completely worthless. He goes to stand up. He can't. He shattered one of his ankles. Ow. So he is now behind enemy lines in the middle of a gunfight, blown up, can't walk, and has no gun. And then he hears screaming and smells burning flesh. All the rest of the men that aren't injured have made their way into the wood line off of the landing zone, and there is now an NVA soldier that is going to all of the wounded men, mostly indigenous guys, and Robert Howard, and he is walking up to them with a flamethrower and burning them alive.
Right.
At this point, Howard knows he's fucked. He's about to get burned alive, so he starts digging around for anything he has on him that's going to be helpful. He ends up finding a frag grenade. His hands are so messed up, he can't really use his fingers yet with a lot of dexterity. So he's fighting, trying to get his fingers in, and he manages to pull the pin on this grenade, and he's holding the spoon down, and he figures, I'll blow myself up rather than get cooked. But he waits. He's in some tall grass. Maybe this guy isn't going to see him and he's not going to have to blow himself up. So that's what he does. He just waits there, holding this grenade spoon down so it doesn't blow up. He's got the pin in the other hand. In case he gets lucky, he can shove that back in and it's all good. And he waits.
I was curious about that. So you can put the grenade, you can't put the pin back in.
And he waits, and eventually the flamethrower walks up right in front of him. And he is right there, and him and the flamethrower lock eyes, and the flamethrower sees that Howard's holding a grenade, and that dude's got a flamethrower attached to his fucking back. If Howard lets it go, Howard's taking this guy with him, and he knows it. And Howard, with his dark veteran sense of humor, all he can think to himself is, fucking gotcha. And this flamethrower and Howard are just looking at each other right in the eyes. Howard's got this big shit-eating grin on his face like, I'm gonna take you with me. And eventually the flamethrower just kind of nods and starts to step backwards. And as soon as that happens, the SOG guys in the tree line see the flamethrower and start shooting at him, and he takes off running into the tree line. Howard throws the grenade after him, has no idea if he hit the guy or not, turns around and starts crawling towards his men. And the crazy part, in his head, he wasn't thinking, I need to get to my guys to get help for me. In his head, he was thinking, I gotta get to my guys, they need my help. Which is the most main character energy shit ever. On his
100%. That is a very good thing to point out.
way there, he comes across his lieutenant who's alive, but in worse shape than he is, really shot up. And he gets his web gear off, throws that next to him, and starts rendering first aid. And then an enemy bullet hits the LT's web gear and detonates the ammunition inside of it, launching Howard and the LT all over again. He loses consciousness. He comes to, crawls back over to the lieutenant, and starts dragging him towards the men. Finally gets to his group of guys. It's not everybody. There's only 8 guys there, plus Howard and the LT. Everybody else is scattered out throughout the battlefield. Howard takes the LT's radio, starts calling in airstrikes, tells one of the men to hand him a gun. They toss him a 1911, not wanting to give up their own rifle.
That's what I'm talking about. Noisy cricket.
As he's calling in these airstrikes, a squad of MVA charge their position with bayonets, wanting to take him alive. Howard ends up shooting 3. His men take out the rest. Howard's still on the radio. They're sending in gunships. As the gunships are approaching, one of the indigenous fighters that's with him ends up taking a bullet to a smoke grenade on his web gear, freaks out, throws that off of him, and over the radio, Howard hears, "Where are you in relation to that purple smoke?" And Howard's looking at this in front of him, is just like, that's us. As the gunships arrive, the battle kind of dies down a little bit. Howard takes the moment to set up an actual perimeter, directing his men's fields of fire, and he's sending runners out to other small groups of SOG guys that got separated, and he gets everybody on the ground consolidated. He now has about 30 men. From here, Howard asks the medic how his lieutenant's doing. The medic says he's doing everything he can, but he doesn't think he's gonna make it, to which Howard replies, and I quote, "Make him make it." Howard then brings in all the able-bodied men that he has them consolidate ammunition, and then pretty much just tells them how it is. We're not moving anymore. We're gonna stay right here. You're gonna fight or you're gonna die, and if you try to run, I will shoot you myself.
Everyone fights, no one quits. You don't do your job, I'll shoot you.
He then directs his men where to place claymores and asks his men if anybody has strobe lights, collects all the strobe lights that they have, and crawls around their perimeter and places the strobe lights in place before crawling back to the center to man the radio. Once back at the radio, he tells headquarters that his perimeter is marked and they need to shoot pretty much everywhere that isn't inside of this triangle. They tell him the Huey gunships are 15 minutes out. He doesn't have 15 minutes. The NVA just launched another major attack. The only thing they have right now is a Cessna 01 Bird Dog circling overhead, mostly there to help coordinate airstrikes airstrikes, but it does have 4 white phosphorus rockets on board. It's not a lot, but it's better than nothing. Robert tells him exactly where to fire these rockets. They fly by, fire the 4 white phosphorus rockets, and repel this wave of the attack. The 01 Bird Dog pilot then radios down to Robert, "That's all we've got," to which Robert replies, "You got an M16 up there?" And they're like, "Yeah." He goes, "Fly by and drop it off. I need one." So now at least he's got a gun, and he's got to survive another 10 minutes before the Huey gunships get there.
Man got the M16 as a kill streak.
NVA launches another attack. This time they're trying to come through a creek bed. Robert directs his men to use 40mm grenades and just start lobbing them into this creek bed and repels that wave of the attack. The next wave comes. This time they're coming towards the same place that Robert had all of his men place all the claymores. They let him get up close, detonate the claymores, repel that wave. Finally, the Huey gunships show up, but it's getting dark out. They can't see much, so Howard has to direct their fire from the radio on the ground. And this goes on for hours. When the Hueys run out of fuel and ammunition, they get cycled out with a Moonbeam gunship. And when that runs out of fuel and ammunition, they bring in F-3 Phantoms. They're just cycling out whatever aircraft they have to get Howard the fire support that he needs, and the entire time he is on the ground directing their fire. He is quite literally like an orchestra conductor guiding a symphony of destruction all around him. And this goes on for 4 hours before Howard gets word that Hueys are on their way to come extract him. The first Huey shows up, they get it loaded up with wounded, dead, and indigenous fighters. Howard, even though he's injured, refuses to leave the combat zone. First Huey takes off, second Huey lands. More men get loaded on that Huey. Again, Howard refuses to leave. He is the highest ranking man on the ground, and he is going to be the last one out. After the second Huey leaves, it is now just Howard, 2 other SOG guys, and 2 indigenous fighters. As the third and final Huey pulls up, they get the 2 indigenous on board. 1 SOG guy hops in the helicopter as Howard and the remaining SOG guy get into an argument right at the helicopter. Howard has just seen the dead body of his lieutenant off in the distance. He was originally loaded on the first helicopter, and because he had passed, some of the indigenous fighters decided they were going to throw his corpse out of the helicopter to lighten the load so the helicopter could get out of there faster.
Damn.
Robert Howard is not about to leave his lieutenant out there. The other SOG guy in the helicopter hops out, and the 3 of them go out, retrieve his body, drag it back to the helicopter, get him loaded up. The other 2 SOG guys get loaded in the helicopter and then pull Howard into the helicopter as he is the last man out.
I feel like that's a difference in training, right? And it's a difference in mentality, right? Where, yeah, no man left behind. And, you know, obviously the dude has, his lieutenant has unfortunately been KIA, right? But the fact that they still went to retrieve him, right? To, you know, bring back his body, to give his family closure, right? I think speaks volumes. And it also speaks volumes about the mentality of the other group who, you know, views it as very much we just need to lighten the load. We need to get rid of, you know, anything not worth it, right? I think it's an interesting concept to draw attention to.
From here, Howard is immediately shipped off to a hospital in Saigon to be treated for his injuries. The chain of command then debriefs all of the remaining men that they have, and pretty much everybody has the same story. They all would have died if it weren't for the leadership of Robert Howard. The men on the ground were credited with 25 to 50 kills, and the airstrikes directed by Robert Howard were credited with at least 50, most likely more. For this, Robert Howard is awarded a 2nd Distinguished Service Cross and written up for the Medal of Honor for a 3rd time. After the debriefs, a couple of days go by. Nobody's really expecting to see Robert Howard anytime soon. If ever again, he might be going home for good after the extent of his injuries. And sure enough, like 4 days later, he shows up in hospital pajamas to SOB2. He was apparently satisfied with how much he had recovered in 3 days and thought the medics on SOB2 could handle the remainder of his recovery. So he went AWOL from the hospital, hitched a ride back to SOB2, and he's planning on going back out on missions already. I know I've already said this, but the dude is literally the Terminator. He can't be stopped.
Who's the Energizer Bunny? He just keeps going.
I'm back.
The chain of command is like, look, Bob, look, you're hurt. You're recommended for the Medal of Honor. You're not going out on missions. You're going to be the training NCO and whoop everybody else into shape because you obviously know exactly what you're doing. So he spends the rest of his deployment being the training NCO for all the SOG operatives going out on missions, and apparently he was a complete hard ass. He had all of his guys out on the highway in Khartoum running to be in shape, and they're like, the base has been attacked before. We're going to get attacked while we're out here jogging. This isn't a good idea. Bob didn't really care, didn't listen. And then one time they take some indirect sniper fire. Nobody got hurt. And surely at this point, Bob's going to reconsider. There's not going to be any more jogging along the highway. Nah, Bob just orders that they all start jogging with loaded guns. Bob finishes up the remainder of his deployment. Then he is basically voluntold that he's going to go off to become an officer. So
I mean, you want to talk about trigger discipline, right? the amount of people that I've talked about the last time I went to an outdoor range, which was fairly recently, where I actually finally got to shoot my Smith & Wesson 500. If I heard one more person cross the yellow line when they weren't supposed to, I was about to crash out, okay? You want to talk about trigger discipline? That's how you build trigger discipline. Make sure that you are following trigger discipline, all the 4 basic rules of firearm safety, while training and jogging, but also running in a, environment that you can and have gotten attacked in, right? I just think that'd be a very interesting way for your average, 2A11 American to actually train, right? To actually train, to make sure you're practicing the 4 basic rules of firearm safety, to be able to exercise while adhering to basic firearm safety. Honestly, as you can't make it a requirement, but I think it'd be very fun to incentivize it being a requirement, right? But then again, as much of a hard ass this man is, I'm a hard ass when it comes to firearms. I am very prim and proper.
He goes back home to the States and has to go through the officer's training course with literally new guys fresh out of college.
Oh no.
You're out! Doyle rules!
Which is hilarious. Could you imagine being some 23-year-old kid that's got a 4-year degree from college and now you're in officer training school to be an infantry officer and you're in the same class as Bob fucking Howard, the Terminator, who's got 2 distinguished service crosses and like 5 Purple Hearts at this point? Even worse, could you imagine being this guy's instructor tasked with teaching him how to be an infantry officer? Obviously, he passes officer candidate school with flying colors. From here, they ship him off to Ranger School, which is one of the hardest programs in any military branch ever. He basically walks through it backwards and graduates as the distinguished honor graduate, meaning he was literally the best guy in the entire class.
I feel like this would be feeling like you're being put out to pasture, right? To be able to go on such intense missions, to see so much action, and then to effectively feel like you're getting downgraded to, I'm teaching literal college kids about life, right? About things, right? I feel like that would be... I could see a lot of people being insulted by that. I could absolutely, see it being an insult. But I mean, it is a legal and lawful order of, hey, you're doing the thing, right? Your contract says, we still get to tell you what to do. I could definitely see it being, viewed as you being put out to pasture. That's wild.
Just super impressive regardless, but it's absolutely insane that Bob Howard was able to be the best guy in the entire cycle of Ranger School, despite having been blown up, shot multiple times, all the shit he's been through, and he's like 30 years old, and he's just smoking all these new recruits. After that, he goes to some other leadership school, then they send him off to Jungle Warfare School. Of all the schools he apparently needs to go to, they send him to Jungle Warfare School. After that, they send his ass back to Vietnam, to Khartoum, to SOB2. And the crazy part, he's pumped. He wants to get back and start going out on missions. He gets there, he's told that he's still waiting for the Medal of Honor. They're not going to be sending him out on missions. He's going to resume his role as training all of the new guys. From here, he does a great job. He knows when a guy's ready to lead the team. He knows when a guy isn't. He's training these guys, toughening them up, getting them ready. Sometimes he takes it a little bit too far. There was one time he loaded shotgun shells with rock salt and was shooting it at people.
Honestly, based. Can we have range service officers do that? Can we have RSOs do that on at ranges? So you have homeboy who just like brings 3 pistols up to the front bench. Just have the RSO walk up and just shoot them with rock salt. Please, can we do this? I'm in for this. I'm in for extensive range day. I'm for this.
It was Vietnam. It was a
That's
different
great.
Time.
Base movie. Major Pain being a movie I watched in my formative years definitely makes a lot of my mannerisms make a lot more sense.
Right, my little patch of Brussels sprouts. Uproot yourselves, climb out the pool, get some rest. Tomorrow, lady, we gonna start the hard stuff.
So he didn't get to go out on missions, but he still did get to see some action because multiple times while he was there, SOB2 was attacked and he got to help defend it. On one of these occasions, he would actually be shot in the heel during the opening portion of the battle. Bob, being Bob, doesn't really give a shit, just bounces right off his plot armor. He starts directing men and leading the defense of the compound. And as he's doing his thing, some specialist comes running up to him and is like, Bob, you got a phone call. And he's like, motherfucker, I'm kind of busy right now. We're defending the compound. And he's like, but it's General Westmoreland. And he's like, what does he want? I mean, does he know that we're under attack right now? What's the deal? He goes, no, but he wants to talk to you. You need to go talk to him right now. So he's like, Fuck, okay. So he like limps across the base, gets over to the phone. Bob answers the phone. He's like, hello. And General Westmoreland's like, Bob, how are you? And he's like, I'm good. My foot kind of hurts. I'm a little bit busy. What's up? And he's like, I just wanted to call and congratulate you. You're being awarded the Medal of Honor. And he's like, oh, all right. And
Good
General
stuff.
Westmoreland's like, yeah, I've got a chopper on the way to pick you up right now. From here, he pretty much gets extracted on the spot, gets swept off to Washington, D.C., and gets awarded the Medal of Honor by President Nixon. From here, Robert Howard never returns to Vietnam. He had spent in total 40 months in combat. Instead, he's given instructor roles pretty much for the remainder of his career. He trains airborne soldiers, he trains infantry, he's an instructor at Ranger School, all kinds of stuff. And while he almost certainly does miss going out and doing Robert Howard stuff, he also appreciates the opportunity to make up for lost time with his daughters. As tough and as crazy and as violent as he could be, he treated those girls like little angels. And on one occasion, one of the teachers at the military school that they were attending decided that he was going to take his belt off and whip one of his daughters for being loud and disrespectful in
They're about to go through a window.
class. Upon hearing this, Robert Howard then instructed his daughter to get in the car. They drove to the officer's house on base. He walked up to the front door, rang the doorbell, made his daughter apologize to the officer for being disruptive in class, and then sent his daughter back to the car and then proceeded to beat the shit out of him on his own porch.
Nice. Good stuff. Can we bring that back?
He then was stationed down in Fort Lewis, where he was an officer with the 2nd Ranger Battalion, where he was known for training extremely hard with his guys and leading from the front. During a field training exercise, they were going to jump out of a plane, simulating an airborne mission, and then they were going to pack their shit up and road march 26 miles. Upon jumping out of the plane, Robert Howard's chute doesn't open properly, and he hits the ground at twice the speed he's supposed to. The medics overseeing the LZ run up, assuming that this guy is dead, only to find Robert Howard packing up his chute. He looks over at the medics and says, if this shit gets any harder, I'm gonna quit. He then proceeds to finish the 26-mile road march.
Okay.
I'm back, motherfucker!
Okay, Robert Howard might be the biggest badass I've ever covered, which is saying an awful lot. I've never seen plot armor this thick. It's absolutely insane.
I mean, this man's got a constitution of 25. Like, I don't... Like, we all have our D&D stat that we kind of, have, like, a bunch of people say, yeah, Kip, whiz seems to be your stat. I'll take the wisdom stat, right? Average strength, my dexterity's garbage, right? Constitution's pretty middling, right? Charisma, I ain't got that riz, I'm sorry to say. But I mean, like, my wisdom stat's pretty good. Int is kind of lacking. It's why I like doing what I do. I get to learn new things, right? This man is just like that constitution stat is jacked. Okay, he's got some modifiers.
He continues to serve in the military in multiple roles until finally retiring in 1992 after 36 years in service at the rank of colonel. He would then pass away at the age of 70 in 2009, and that is a story of Robert Howard, the most gangster supply sergeant of all time, the most decorated Green Beret of all time, and quite literally the human embodiment of the Terminator. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at theFatElectrician.com. Quack bang out.
Good video. I liked it.
Oh, and then there was a story of when his son-in-law asked permission to marry one of his daughters, and he said, and I quote, "As I extended my hand to shake his, it was the largest hand I had ever seen in my entire life. He then proceeded to tell me, I know why you're here and you have my permission, but know this, if you ever hurt my daughter, no one is ever going to find your body."
I'm into that. I'd be okay. I would be okay hearing that, okay? Asking someone's father for permission and their father just saying, in very, very calm terms that you will have
I was
not
down at
existed.
the bottom of the hill, and there was a medic sergeant named Brown who got shot up pretty bad, but he come over to me and I said, "Is the lieutenant still alive?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "We've got him down." He said, "I've got an IV in him, but I don't think he's gonna make it." I said, "Make him make it." I said, "You keep that lieutenant alive."
You just look at that man and he's been through stuff, and he has the experience. What an absolute legend. This was awesome. It's amazing to watch. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Fat Electrician, for another amazing video. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I certainly did. And I will see you all in the next